Hi, scholars. Welcome back to math for this week. This is your first lesson for this week. This week, fraction starts to get a little bit more complicated than what we have been working on. It's pretty simple overall, but make sure that you're paying attention to the words that I'm saying and the way that I'm solving and thinking through each problem to make sure that you have a very solid understanding, that you're confident that you have mastered today's objective. So today's objective says identify a shaded fractional part. I broke it down by the color. So the first part is identify a shaded fractional part. So for an example, if I have a square and I partition it into halves, and I shade in one of those halves, identify a shaded fractional part. This shaded fractional part is one half. Okay, so that's all that means. We know how to do this. We know how to identify fractional parts. Then it says in different ways. So I could also have a square here divided into halves, but I do it diagonally. So that's what the different ways means. Depending on the designation of the whole, so depending on how the shape is partitioned will determine how you identify each part. Okay, and it's a little bit hard to understand right now because I haven't showed you the skill yet. But just stick around. You'll understand later on in the lesson. So basically, you want to be able to identify parts of a shape depending on how it's partitioned or how it's divided. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to do your application problem. Your application problem says Davis wants to make a picture using 9 square tiles. What fraction of the picture does one tile represent? Draw 3 different ways Davis could make his picture. So what you're basically doing is you're thinking of, okay, he has 9 tiles total. Okay, so you have to find a way to draw 9 tiles differently. So you'll have one way, 2 ways, 3 ways, and you want to draw a picture next to 1, 2, 3, so I can see your different drawings to represent how he could draw the 9 tiles. Okay, there are different ways that you could draw 9 tiles. I'm not going to give you a hint because I'm very confident that you can figure that out on your own. The next part says, what fraction of the picture does one tile represent? So after you draw a picture of 9 tiles, and one of those tiles, what would that fraction be? If there are 9 tiles total and you're only representing one, it's only one, let's say it's only one shaded, how do you represent that using a fraction? You already know how to do that, okay? So go ahead and do your application problem. It's a review. If you have not done it yet, please go ahead and pause this video and take the time to complete it. If you have done your application problem, you're ready for the next step. So this is your first page. Okay. So the directions say it's a chart and it has 2 sides, so we have to read the directions on both sides. Side 1 says the shape represents one whole. Write a unit fraction to describe the shaded part. The shaded part. Identify a shaded fractional part. Okay, so this is how we'll do this. I'll write in my marker to make sure that you can see it. What's the fraction of this figure in 1A? That's right, it's 1/2. So you should have 1/2 written on your paper. Next, it says the shaded part represents one whole. So now we're looking at just this shaded part as one whole. This other part, we're not even looking at that right now. Just the shaded part is one whole, okay? It says divide the whole to show the same unit fraction you wrote in part A. So now I'm going to draw it on my board so you can see it. So now you basically have this like sideways triangle, right? And the entire figure looks like this. So this is what you have. This part is shaded. Right? And this part is left blank. So now we're not even looking at this part. So I'm going to erase it because we're only looking at the shaded figure. Okay, so that's what's left. This is all we're focusing on. So the part that was at the bottom, don't even think about that. You can cross it out. Okay, so I'll draw it back. This is what you can do on your paper. You can just cross it out because we're not using that part. We're only focusing on the shaded part. Then it says divide one whole, so this shaded part, into the same unit fraction you wrote for part A. So for part A, we said that the shaded part was 1/2, right? Now we want to show 1/2 on only the shaded part. We want to divide that or partition that into halves. So what you would do is, and I'm going to use my fingers since I already colored it in or shaded it in. So if I want to make this triangle 1/2, I'm going to draw a line right down the middle. Now this whole, just the shaded part, has been partitioned into 2 halves. Okay? So all you did was in part A, you said what part is shaded. There's 1/2. 1/2 of this figure is shaded. Next, you take the shaded part, which now represents 1 whole, and you made it into halves. Okay, so whatever fraction is shown in part A, you're going to draw that in the shaded part on part B. Okay, let's do number 2. Number 2 is the last one I would do for you or do with you. So make sure that you're paying attention and you understand. Okay. So, part A, you have this square, okay, kind of a sideways square. And it's partitioned into fourths. So you can split it down the middle and then split it down the middle again. Make sure it's even. Okay. It's pretty even. Not perfect, but it's close. And here you have this square shaded in. All right. This is what's on your paper. So, what's the fraction? And part A is asking, what is the fraction of the shaded part of this figure? It's 1 over how many total parts are there? 4. Good. 1/4. This represents 1/4. Now, in part B, you have the same figure right here. You're going to use, now the shaded part is 1 whole. So we are not looking at either of these. Okay, these don't exist right now. This square here that's shaded is our whole now. Now we have to partition this shaded square, just the shaded part only. We have to represent using showing 1/4. We have to show 1/4 here on this square. So I'm going to erase the part that I shaded so you can see me draw 1/4. I have to partition this 1 square into fourths. One fourth, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4. Okay, and I will write it here on this paper so you can see it. I'll hold it up to the screen so you can see that as well. So this is what my paper looks like. Okay. I know that this shaded part is 1/4 of this entire figure. And I use this, now this shaded part is my 1 whole, and I partitioned it to represent 1/4. So whatever fraction you write for part A, that's what you're going to show in the shaded part on part B. Okay, so you have 3 more to do on your own like that. So remember, for part A, you're writing the fraction of the shaded part. Part B, you are taking the shaded part, and that's now your whole. You're only looking at the shaded part, and you're partitioning it into whatever fraction you had for part A. Okay, if you don't understand, please go back and rewind and watch what I did on my paper, and that will help you to understand what you're supposed to do for 3, 4, and 5 parts A and B. Okay. Next, flipping our page over. We're almost through our problem set, y'all. Halfway there. So, first it says, use the diagram below to complete the following statements. I am going to draw the ropes here on the board so you could get a better idea of what I'm drawing and what I'm saying. So give me 1 second. Let me draw these ropes for you. You have rope A, rope B, and rope C. Okay. So here's rope A. Rope B is here. And rope C is there. Okay. All right, here we are. These are what your ropes look like on your paper. So A through E, you're going to have to answer a series of questions. Okay. So for A, it says rope blank is half the length of rope B. So the thing that you need to pay attention to solve these problems is look for what comes for A and B. Look for what comes. Read the sentence that comes after the blank. That's what's going to help you determine which rope is correct. So for an example, it says rope blank is half the length of rope B. So looking at rope B, we want to figure out which rope is half of rope B, half of it. Rope C is the only one that's shorter than rope B. Okay, rope A is not half of rope B; it's more than rope B. So rope C is your answer for part A. Okay, I want you to do B independently. I'm not going to help you with that one. Rope C, look, I'm on C. Rope C is 1/4 the length of rope blank. So rope C is 1/4 of which of these ropes? Is 1/4 of it? Which one? Okay. I want you to answer C independently as well. D gets a little tricky here. If rope B is 1 meter long, so let's say that rope B is 1 meter long, then rope A is blank meters long. So if rope B is 1 meter long, how long is rope A? If you go back to question A, we put that rope Once you answer B, it'll be easier to answer D. So if rope B is 1 meter long, then rope A is how long? If rope B is 1 meter long, let's see, rope B stops here. It's about halfway through, right? So if rope B is 1 meter long, how long is rope A? If rope B comes up halfway to rope A, how long is rope A? If this much is 1 meter and you add this part together, how many meters is that? 2. Good. So for this first blank in D, you should put, if rope B measures 1 meter long, then rope A is 2 meters long. And rope C is blank meters long. How many meters long do you think rope C is? Compare the size of rope C to rope B. If this is 1 meter, is this 1 meter? No, it's not the same length. Is it about half? It's about half a meter. So rope C is 1/2 or half a meter long. Okay, so all you're doing here is you're comparing the length of each rope. Okay, you have to take your time. Make sure you're reading what the problem is saying. Okay, draw it out if you need to. See, that's about half of it, or that's about 1/4 of it. Okay, take your time and read the problem to see exactly which rope fits and how long. You're estimating on how long you think each rope will be. Okay, even though it's a little bit tricky, I want you to try E independently. Okay. Letter F is very important, and this is the type of question you're going to have on your exit ticket. So please, 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 please pay attention, as this can get very, very tricky. All right. So Miss Fan drew the figure on the board, and I will draw it here for you to see. It's a rectangle. And if you would like to, you could draw it along with me, even though it's in your workbook. If not, it's okay. And then there's a line going straight down the middle. Okay. So this part is shaded in. And so is all of the bottom. So all of this is shaded in. Okay. So it's a little bit above the line. It says Miss Fan drew the figure on the board. She asked the class to name the shaded fraction. Charlie answered 3/4. So Charlie said, oh, you shaded in 3/4 of this rectangle. Janice answered 3/2, 3/2. So Janice said, no, those are 3/2. Jenna thinks they're both right. With whom do you agree? And explain your thinking. So you might be thinking, Ms. Breeden, this makes no sense. I know half of it is shaded here. And I know half of a half is shaded here, which means 1/4. But I don't know what to do with that. Okay? So I'm about to explain to you what they want you to understand in this problem. So this is where the black part in our objective, or the black writing in our objective, comes into hand. It says, depending on the designation of the whole. So it depends on how you split this whole up. However this whole is split up, that determines what the fraction is, or how much is shaded. So let's draw a new rectangle, just like the one we have above. And we have a line in the middle, right? So it could be where this rectangle is partitioned into fourths. Okay, and if we shade in the same amount, it means this part is shaded, this part is shaded, and this part is shaded. What's that fraction? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. So we know our denominator, our number at the bottom, is going to be 4. And the number at the top is however many is shaded in. 1, 2, 3. So this will be 3/4. So Charlie could be correct. Okay? It could be 3/4. It looks the same. It's the same amount shaded here that's shaded here. So it could be 3/4. Let's see about Janice's answer. She said 3/2. So I'm going to draw a new rectangle. And this is exactly how I want you all to work out word problems, especially when it comes to fractions, because it can be become very tricky. So Janice said she believes it's 3/2. So how this is partitioned is here. Okay. So if this is a line here, these are halves. They're looking at this is one whole, and this top part is one whole. So where this first line is, they're looking at this top part is one whole, and this top part is one whole. Okay. So if we partition these holes, this is a hole and that's a hole. These are two holes, not halves. These are two holes. So this part is one whole rectangle, and then this part at the bottom is one whole rectangle. I need you all to make sure you understand that. So this is one whole, and this part is one whole. Okay. I know it looks like one, but for right now, I need you to look at it as, oh, these are two separate rectangles. So if we partition these down the middle, so this is one half, this is one half. This is one half, this is one half. Okay, so now we have four halves. So if we shade in the same amount here, which would be one of these, two of these, three of these. Three is how many is shaded, so that's going to be our top number. Next, we have to look at what are these. These are not fourths because these are looked at as two different rectangles. These are going to be halves. So it's going to be 3 over 2. This part is a half, this part is a half, and this part is a half. These are 3 halves. Let me draw it again just because I know this could be a little bit confusing. Watch the way that I draw my rectangles up here. One rectangle. Two rectangles. Rectangle 1, rectangle 2. Do y'all understand that? Rectangle 1, rectangle 2. It's the same thing here. I just separated them. Now I'm going to split these rectangles into halves. Half. And I'm going to shade that half. So one half of this rectangle is shaded. Then I'm going to split this rectangle in half. These are 2 parts in halves. And I'm going to shade both parts. So 2 halves are shaded. 1 half plus 2 halves equals 3 halves. 3 over 2. Okay? So Janice is also correct. So it depends, the fraction that you are able to identify depends on how the figure or the shape is partitioned. Okay, let me give you one. I want to give you another example before I give you to your exit ticket. I think you deserve at least one more example, so make sure that you understand. Sorry about my board. Okay. Let's say that Miss Breeden made a pot of soup. And no, Miss Breeden has a pizza. Okay. And we want to know, the shaded part is how much has been eaten. Okay, this is my pizza. This is how much that has been eaten. Give Miss Breeden 1 second. Here we go. So the part that I have shaded in, that's how much has been eaten. This is how much is left. So Savannah may say, "Oh, Miss Breeden, you ate 1/2 of a pizza." But Zavi may say, "Oh, Miss Breeden, you ate 2/4 of a pizza." Okay? So Savannah is looking at it like this. Oh, you ate half of a pizza. It's easy to see. It's split right down the middle. But Zavi may see it like this, or he may be imagining it in this way. Okay, so he's imagining that this was eaten, and this is eaten, and this is what's left over. They're both correct. It's just that we're partitioned differently. So it's the exact same thing. Sometimes you may have to just draw it out and shade it in and say, "Oh, I see now 2/4. That is the same thing as 1/2." Okay, so for your exit ticket, don't get tricked. This is what your exit ticket looks like. It says Miss Silverstein asked the class to draw a model showing 2/3 shaded. Carol and Deb drew the models below. Whose model is correct? Explain how you know. Don't get tricked. Look at the models very carefully. Okay? And you take the time to partition. The one that's going to be the most difficult is Carol's because there are no lines at all. We can see Deb's, but we can't see Carol's. So you're going to have to try to partition this into 2/3 to see if Carol's shading was correct. Take your time. Don't get tricked. I will give you one hint right now. It is not that both of them. It is not that. Do I want to give you this hint? I'm not going to give you a hint. No hint. You figure it out. I'm very confident that you can get it. Okay. So that is your exit ticket. I know today's lesson was a little. It could have been a little bit challenging. It was a little bit difficult. I wish that you were here so I can have different shapes and figures for you all. But the best that I could do was show you my drawing for now. If you have any questions, please have your parents to reach out to me. Also, continue to get on Zern. Zern is directly aligned to what I'm teaching you now, and it will help you to understand. If you did not completely get it in my lesson, Zern will definitely help. So make sure that you're logging on to Zern and getting that extra practice in. Okay, you have one more lesson in this unit before you have another quiz. So I want you to make sure that you understand that. So please, if you do not understand, sit down with someone in your household to see if they can break it down to you. If not, have them reach out to me so I can help you. Okay? See you all next time.